In today's topic, we are going to discuss the important MCQ points in digestion and absorption. I have tried to cover as much as possible very important MCQs, and don't skip the video, completely watch it, so that I have added additional points also, so if it comes even out of NCERT book, you can attend it. Quick revision about digestion and absorption. So digestion and absorption, there are different systems in our body, and digestive system is the one which performs the function of digestion and absorption. Digestion is a biochemical process, first MCQ. Second MCQ, it is carried out with the help of digestive enzyme. Food which we take has carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, vitamins, minerals, water. So all these are present in a complex form. That is, our body cannot observe this complex form. It has to be converted to simple form for the body to observe it. For example, you have syllabus for NEET. Can you study it as a whole? No, you have to study it chapter wise, unit wise and page wise, so that you can easily observe the information which is given in the book. Same way, you have to break a bigger task to smaller one. If you break it down, it will be smaller and easier. Okay, if you have a bigger task, like you have to complete biology, what you do, you divide it into smaller subunits, then it will be easy for you to study, as well as it will retain in your mind. Same way, the complex form has to be converted to very simpler form, so that the body can observe. What happens in digestion is, this complex form which we cannot observe, which the intestine cannot observe, is converted into simpler form which can be observed by the intestine with the help of what? Digestive enzymes. There are different types of digestive enzymes which is present in the stomach, as well as associated glands like liver, pancreas, all secrete enzymes which helps to break down carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and once it is broken down into smaller particles, they are absorbed in the alimentary canal, that is in the small intestine, and the water is absorbed in the large intestine. It's easy to understand. I have divided into two. The digestive system is made up of alimentary canal as well as the associated glands. Today we are going to see only about the alimentary canal. Associated glands will be liver, pancreas, salivary glands, that is the glands which secrete enzymes which helps in digestion. So that will come under associated glands. Today we are going to see about the alimentary canal. What is the meaning of alimentary canal? That is, it is a tube or passage through which the food will pass. Okay, so we intake it through the mouth. So the food which enters through the mouth passes through the tube or the passage. There it is broken down into simpler form and it is absorbed. Then it is absorbed and the waste is excreted out. Okay, so alimentary canal is a tube or a muscular passage through which the food enters. It is broken down from complex form to simpler form. Then it is absorbed and the waste is excreted out. So this is the alimentary canal. It begins. So it has got two openings. Tube has got, you all know, a tube will be having two ends, the front end and the back end. That is, the front end is the one which starts and the back end will be the one which ends. So here the front end or the beginning of alimentary canal is mouth. Okay, and the part where it ends, you call it as anus. Okay, or the back end. Now I will explain it here. Alimentary canal has got two ends, the front end and the back end. That is, the front end is the mouth, or you call it as the anterior opening. Anterior means front. The back end, that is the end of alimentary canal, you call it as posterior opening, or it is the back end. So two openings, mouth and anus. So the food which enters through the mouth undergoes the process of digestion and absorption inside the alimentary canal. Then the waste is excreted out through the anus. Now the process of intake, this is one MCQ, the front end and the back end. That is, the anterior opening of alimentary canal is mouth and the posterior opening is anus. This is one MCQ. Second, so we take the food through the mouth. That is intake of food. You call it as ingestion. This is the second process through which we take the food in through the mouth is called as ingestion. Now the mouth opens into buccal cavity or oral cavity. So you can see mouth, lips. Okay. You yourself can look into the mirror and see and just observe this activity. Open your mouth and observe what are all the structures you can see and name it in a paper. Okay. So now the lips are closed. When it is open, when the mouth is open, okay, what will you see? You can see teeth, okay, and a tongue, muscular tongue. The space which you look into is called as cavity. You call it as oral cavity or buccal cavity. Cavity means a room or space. Room or space. When you open your mouth, you can see it will be like a room. Okay, inside that you can see teeth, tongue, your cheek muscles and saliva. Okay, you can observe this by yourself in the mirror. Okay, so when you open your mouth, it leads into a place called as buccal cavity or oral cavity. This oral cavity or buccal cavity, it opens into pharynx. To be in particular, it opens into oropharynx, that is the throat region. Okay, oral cavity opens into pharynx, oropharynx, that is the throat region. Here you have two pathways, that is one goes to esophagus and other goes to trachea. Now because we are studying about digestion, imagine the food we are taking in the food, it enters the mouth, then it passes to oral cavity or buccal cavity. Here what happens is the food is broken down into smaller particles, that is the food is chewed and mixed well with the saliva and it forms a small ball, so that you call that as bolus. A small ball of food which is chewed very well with the help of teeth, grinded very well with the help of teeth, and it is mixed with saliva, it forms a small ball. You call it as bolus. You call it as bolus. Now this small ball of food mixed with saliva is moved to the throat region, that is the oropharynx. This is a passage. There is one more MCQ, important MCQ here. The passage which is very common, the passage which is common for both food and air is the oropharynx. Okay, so that is another MCQ. So now the bolus enters the pharynx, that is throat region. Now it has got two openings. There are two pathways here. One goes to trachea and the other goes to esophagus. Now the bolus has to enter esophagus. It should not go into trachea because it may cause aspiration and choking. So now what happens is there is a leaf-like structure, epiglottis, which closes the pathway of trachea. I have mentioned here epiglottis is closed. This is one more MCQ. This will be an applied physiology question, that is what happens, the condition of epiglottis when you take the food in is what? The epiglottis is closed. The epiglottis is closed, okay, preventing the food from entering the trachea. Now the bolus passes through the throat region and it enters the esophagus because the pathway for trachea is closed by epiglottis. Now the food enters the esophagus and from the esophagus it enters the stomach through a movement called as peristalsis. Now you have to remember two movements here. The movement, the process of swallowing, that is bolus is pushed to pharynx, that is called as swallowing, or you call it as deglutition. Okay, so the process of swallowing the food or pushing the bolus from oral cavity into the throat region, you call it as deglutition or swallowing. Another movement is from the esophagus, the food, that is the bolus, reaches the stomach through a movement called as peristalsis. This is one MCQ. So alimentary canal has got two openings, mouth and anus, anterior opening and posterior opening. Ingestion is intake of food. Mouth opens into oral cavity or buccal cavity. Here the bolus is formed. Bolus is nothing but a small ball of food which is chewed and mixed well with the saliva. The process of swallowing, the movement is called as deglutition. This oral cavity opens into oropharynx or throat region. In this condition the epiglottis will be closed, preventing the food from entering trachea, and now the food enters esophagus. The bolus travels the esophagus and enters the stomach through a movement called as peristalsis. All these are important MCQ questions. We are going to quickly revise the important MCQs about buccal cavity or oral cavity. Now when the mouth opens into buccal cavity or oral cavity, just now we saw what are the boundaries of buccal cavity or oral cavity. See, what are the boundaries means limiting factor. What are all the structures which are present in the surroundings so that it makes to look like a space or like a room. Okay, you have maxilla, the cheeks, lips and chin. Okay, so maxilla forms the roof of the oral cavity. The cheeks, you can feel your cheeks and you can see they are made up of muscles. Lips, they are made up of muscles. Chin, it is made up of mandible. This is the sideways representation. This is upper lip and lower lip. Upper jaw you call it as maxilla and the lower jaw is called as mandible. Okay, so this is the oral cavity or this is the space present inside. So this is the buccal cavity or oral cavity. When you open the mouth, you see the spacious place. When you open the mouth, you can see a spacious area. Inside this, you have teeth and tongue, So now boundaries means what are the structures present outside this so that it makes to look like a room. Okay, the upper part is made up of a bone called maxilla or upper jaw, and the lower part is made up of a bone called mandible or lower jaw. The front portion is closed with the help of lips. Now this looks like a room, right? It also contains saliva. So the boundaries are formed by maxilla, mandible, on the front by the lips, and on the sides by the cheeks. Okay, so these are all the boundaries: maxilla, cheeks, lips and chin. So there is an important MCQ here. The process of chewing the food is also called as mastication. So they can ask you like this: mastication is the process which takes place in buccal cavity or oral cavity. It is nothing but chewing the food. Chewing of food is called as mastication. Inside the buccal cavity or oral cavity contains teeth, bones, tongue and saliva. First we will see about teeth. The study of teeth is called as odontology. Teeth is the hardest part of our body. I think these points don't need explanation. Even when you compare bone, the hardest part of our body is teeth. What are the parts of the tooth? Crown, neck and root. This is the structure of an upper incisor. Okay, upper teeth. You can, when you smile, you can see your teeth look like this. Okay, the front teeth. The portion which you are seeing is called as crown. Okay, next you have gums, the gingiva or gums. You call it as gingiva or gums. The pink portion, you call it as gingiva or gums. Actually, if you take it as a flap, okay, if you remove the gingiva and gums, you can see there will be bone. Inside the bone, the structure of tooth will be like this. Okay, this is the root portion which will be present inside the bone. So the crown, the tooth has got crown portion which you can see outside. The root portion you cannot see, it will be placed inside the bone, and the portion which connects the two, crown and root, you call it as neck. So crown, and this is the root which is inside the bone. The part which is connecting the crown and the root is called as neck. A tooth has got crown, neck and root. These are the three parts of a tooth. Sometimes they can ask you. The important minerals present in tooth are calcium, phosphate, and you contain fluoride also. The cross section, CS means cross section of tooth. Due to lack of space, I have tried to shorten it. So CS means cross section of tooth. It is made up of enamel, dentin, pulp and cementum. So for example, this is a molar. Okay, these are the roots. Now this is the crown portion, this is the root portion. The cross section means if you put a slice, for example, take an onion, cut it in the center, look at the other part, you can, how you will see, you can see the slice like this. Okay, so this is the cross section. It is made up of first one layer called as enamel. This is the hardest one. This is the chewing surface where the food gets chewed is at the enamel surface. Okay, next you have dentin. This forms the bulk of the tooth. Okay, most of the tooth is made up of dentin. Next you have a region called as pulp. This pulp contains nerves and blood vessels. Okay, so enamel, dentin and pulp. The root portion is made up of, instead of enamel you have cementum. Okay, you have enamel only in the crown portion, in the root portion it is made up of cementum. So the cross section of tooth is enamel, dentin, pulp and cementum. Enamel is the hardest part, that is, it is the chewing surface of the teeth. Dentin forms the bulk of the teeth. Pulp forms the nutrition, pulp gives nutrition to the teeth, that is, it contains, because it contains blood vessels and nerves, and cementum forms the root portion of the teeth. So about the teeth, these are all the important points. Next you have bones, that is the maxilla and mandible. Just now we saw maxilla is the upper jaw and mandible is the lower jaw. Here one important point, which bone is movable? Only mandible. Maxilla is immovable, that is, maxilla is fixed. When you chew the food, only your mandible moves, your maxilla will be fixed. Like you can see the old mortar and pestle. Okay, the stone mortar and pestle, have you seen? For grinding purpose, mortar will be made of stone, this will be stationary. You have a pestle, okay, a rod, yeah, stone like this. This is called pestle. This will be stationary and this will be movable. Same way, this is used for grinding purpose. Right? Same way, the maxilla is immovable and mandible is movable. So maxilla forms, the other important MCQ points are, maxilla forms the roof of the oral cavity. It is a partition between nasal and oral cavity. It is made up of hard palate and soft palate. This is the upper jaw, you call it as maxilla. maxilla, and this is the lower jaw, you call it as mandible. Important point about this is it is movable, gives attachments to muscles, and this maxilla, you have nasal cavity and this is oral cavity, so it forms the roof of this maxilla, forms the roof of the oral cavity. The partition which separates nasal cavity and oral cavity is maxilla. The front portion is called as hard palate, and the posterior or the back portion you call it as soft palate. Next, tongue. This is present on the basal side of the mouth. This is an important MCQ. Tongue is made up of muscles and papillae. Tongue does not have any bones, you all know that. So it is made up of only muscles. Because it is made up of muscles, they are freely movable. Tongue is freely movable. It is attached to the oral cavity by means of a tissue called frenulum. When you lift the tongue, on the base of the tongue, you can see a small tissue that is called as frenulum. This is important MCQ. You closely look at your tongue, you can see small reddish dot-like structures. Okay, they are very small. That is, they are tiny. Okay, these dot-like structures. Look at your tongue closely and observe it. You can see the small dots. Okay. Dot-like structures, they are not dots, they are dot-like structures. You call it as papillae. So papillae are small projections on the upper surface of the tongue. Okay, on the back surface of the tongue you have frenulum. This is an important MCQ. Upper surface you have papilla. What are the four types of papilla? Fungiform papillae, fungiform, circumvallate, foliate and filiform. In these three papillae, taste buds are present. Taste buds means which give you the sensation of taste, okay, like sweet, bitter or sour taste. These three papillae helps you to differentiate the taste of the food, whereas filiform papillae does not contain any taste buds. So this is one important MCQ. Four types of papillae are present. Taste buds are present in these three papillae, whereas filiform papillae does not contain any taste buds. Next is the saliva. Okay, the watery substance which is present in your mouth is called as saliva. It is secreted by three glands, that is three structures. They are called as parotids, submandibular and sublingual. Each is a pair, okay, one pair. Parotid on either side of the cheeks. Submandibular, this is also one pair. Sublingual, this is also one pair. So totally three pairs of salivary glands are present which secretes saliva. Parotids are present in the cheeks. This is an important MCQ. This is the largest of the three salivary glands. Submandibular, they are present under the jaw bones, that is they are present under mandible. Sublingual, they are present under the tongue. Lingual means tongue, so sub means below. You can easily remember sublingual is present under the tongue. Okay, so these are the three pairs of salivary glands. Two important substances. First is the salivary amylase and lysozyme. So lysozyme is an antibacterial agent which is present in the saliva to prevent infection. Next is salivary amylase. It is also called as ptyalin. It acts on starch, carbohydrates and converts it into maltose. In the oral cavity, 30% of carbohydrates is digested. These are all important MCQs. Three pairs of salivary glands, parotids present in cheeks, submandibular under the jaw bones, sublingual under the tongue, and saliva contains salivary amylase, also called as ptyalin. It acts on starch and converts it into maltose. 30% of carbohydrate digestion begins in the oral cavity. Lysozyme is another important antibacterial agent which is present in the saliva, helps in preventing the